the official mug. We have some chats. Why no video? Russell, you can see. We're all on video. I think you're the only one that can't see.
No, I can only see you two and Martin on video.
I think it's because we're the only ones with our video turned on. Okay, so we've started recording. 3 minutes past 5, which means it's officially time for the next London Marketo user group, which always makes us very excited. So Emily is being my tech support, and I'm doing the intro, as we'd like to try and switch it up as often as possible because we are both a little bit averse to public speaking. So we are really glad you've all joined us today. Thank you so much for making the time. I know everyone's getting a little bit over doing these Zoom calls now, and we're all dying to get back in person. Hopefully, it could be that the next one we're all together in person. Who knows how it's all going to go, but that would be delightful to all get back together in London. Yeah, I'd love it. The outside world. So we first have, if you wouldn't mind just popping to the next slide, please, Em. Thank you. So just a general reminder of our user group house rules. And this is just to make sure that everyone feels safe and secure within this environment. So we just ask that you do no self-promotion or pitching. So we don't want people being hounded just for attending the user group. We ask you don't contact people outside of the user group without their consent. Again, we're just trying to get out of that mentality that we used to have, previous leaders have, where we were getting hounded for attending the mug. And then also, if someone does share a use case at the mug, please do not share it without their express permission outside of the user group. We just like to make sure that everyone feels comfortable talking about their instances and experiences without worrying that it's going to get back if you're being less than complimentary about an implementation that you've received, for example, which I'm sure we've all been there. So if you wouldn't mind, next slide, please, Em. Thank you. So we are now on Bevy. We've been on Bevy now a while. We would still class it as a new tool because, frankly, we don't know how to use it. So all of our user groups are posted on our Bevy page. You are all members. Thank you very much for doing so. And anytime we post a new user group, it will be promoted through Bevy. So it should send you an alert as a chapter member. And then we'll also send emails to you all just to let you know. Post it on LinkedIn, shout at you all in the Slack. But once you're a member of the chapter, you'll be alerted every time. And Emily and I are trying to commit to doing a user group per quarter as a minimum. So there'll be at least 4 a year. And then we're also trying to throw in a couple of ad hoc ones. So if anyone wants to get together for a chat or a drink, if you're in Manchester, you know where we are. Give us a shout and that'll be really good fun. So we are joined today by a guest speaker, which makes me really, really excited because we are joined by Inga Romanoff. So Inga is someone that I class as a bit of a celebrity in the MarTech world. When I first started my journey, she was the one that was posting a lot of articles, a lot of assets that really helped me develop my skills as I started in the MarTech world. So we are very, very pleased she was able to join us. So Inga is based in New York, and you'll probably have known her throughout the Marketo world because she has a host of accolades. They're not on the slide, but I know full well that she's been a champion. She is the co-host of the New York user group for, is it 10 years now, Inga? It's one of the longest running
since
user
2012.
groups.
Yeah. What is it? It's crazy. Don't tell anyone.
Insane. And she's going to be running us through GDPR, which I know is a topic that's close to all of our hearts. But before we jump in and hand it over to Inga to do the official presentation, Emily has developed a little poll for everyone, and she's very proud of it, as you can see by her face.
I'm trying to find it, so keep talking.
So she's going to publish it in the chat for everyone to take. It's just a small link to click through, and it's just a couple of questions on GDPR and what it means to you. And I just like to look at the pressure now that Emmy's under.
I've lost it. I'm sorry, I've lost it. It's all open in different windows, and I've lost it.
I feel like she's doing this to really, pump up the excitement about the poll as well, so everyone really jumps on it when we've got it.
Tab. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. I had it all open and it just disappeared.
We can do it after if you like.
Am I allowed to answer as well?
Yeah, of course.
I can see the result.
Let me, you keep talking amongst yourselves. Let me just point it.
There's nothing worse than when you are sharing your screen and
you're
panicking to find something. You're like, oh, please.
All right, here we
Posting
go.
it in the Q&A or in
I
the
found it. I
chat?
found it. Sorry, I lost it. I found it again. Okay, I'm going to post it here in the chat, which is here. Oh.
I think you need to make Simone a co-host as well.
Oh, I'm coming in, Simone. How are you getting on, Em? Oh, to add insult to oh, there she's back. Your internet just crashed as well. I thought we lost you.
I know. I'm so sorry. Anyway, here's the link, everyone, to the poll. I'm now back, apparently, and I'm going to share the results. I'm going to share the results.
Ooh, the link doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. It gives me a 404.
Well, I think it's pasted twice. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, it's pasted twice. Good shout.
So does it work?
Yeah, one second.
It does work. Does it?
It came in twice, that's all.
Oh.
Thank you very much, James. Coming through. He's posted the link now in the chat.
Thanks, guys. Oh, thanks, James. Okay, right. There is a question on the poll. Please start, and I will find. I've now lost the other link. I think my computer's just struggling today. Here we go.
It's just given up.
It's just given up. Oh, you're already answering the question. Hang on. Here we go. Share screen. Right. Okay, we're in business now. So, what does GDPR stand for? I just thought it'd be a nice little icebreaker since we're talking about GDPR, just to get, you know, the conversation going. Looks like
you don't need this session.
You don't need this session. Goodbye, everyone.
I can retire.
And then I believe, is that the only question you can see?
Yeah, we can see what does GDPR stand for.
And it says, stay tuned for the next question.
Well done. You all got it right. Can you see the next question now?
Yes.
Great. Yes. I'm on it.
I'm just frantically going through everyone and making you all presenters. Do not panic. It doesn't mean we're going to call on you. It's just so you can unmute at any point that you want to.
Any idea who's one of the two people in the first line?
I feel sorry for those people straight away. Are you okay?
Don't know
people
there
that have
is
to deal with this.
The don't know there is there, because sometimes there isn't like a core team, but you can say don't know if you don't know. Put that there.
It's not asking whose role it is. It's asking who's responsible for.
That's true. Oh, other. I wonder what other is. I wonder if it's all of the above or like someone else.
It's going to be different for every company, surely.
There he is.
I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you tried to mute me, but you're not going to keep me quiet that easily.
I honestly just don't know how to use this platform, and I'm quite embarrassed about it because obviously we're supposed to be the bleeding experts.
Well, it's working. It's all that matters. The dog's getting very excited about it.
As long as the dog approves.
Anyway, here are the results for this one, Inga. Hopefully that's going to help with your presentation. See if you can tailor it a bit. Look at that. I'm very intrigued on this other. Maybe we can ask at the end of the session who other is. And there is one last question to keep it positive. What's everyone's favorite part of GDPR? I know we always talk about pain points. What about the good stuff? Can you see it come up? Oh, you can. Oh, good.
You should have allowed multiple answers. This is a tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, next time when I'll level up in this direct poll. Oh, clean data.
It just sounds sexy.
Yeah, I kind of like the last one, the no more random campaigns. It's, you know, when sales say, "Oh, can we run this? Can we email these people?" You're like, no, no.
Can we send us 5 campaigns tomorrow?
No, no, GDPR. Well, someone's very frugal over here. No one loves a tick box then. Is that 17? 18. Okay. I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah, this is all good. Okay, well, oh, hang on, there's more people. There's more people. How many votes am I expecting? 26. Okay. I think clean data is a clear winner here. We love good clean data, don't we, as marketers? Okay,
Because we never have it.
Because we never have it. Oh, Warren said he's missed a poll. That's okay.
No, I managed to vote. I just jumped in, got the link from James. Perfect.
Perfect.
Who's Warren?
I chose stronger conversion rates.
Of course you did.
Yeah,
I knew you would.
Arguably, GDPR is a result of getting them to specifically opt in. So it's a behavioural trait. So I certainly noticed that when people take that time to do that, you've arguably got a stronger database.
You've left off legitimate interest.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that your favourite part of it?
Russell's like, I know we can't email them, but wait a second, legitimate interest.
Yeah, I spoke to you once in 2010.
Yes. Don't take out from Inga's presentation. But this is perfect. Thank you very much for running this poll. It looks great. And I have made everyone in the call a presenter now. That's what that horrible face you had to stare at when I was concentrating. So if there is anyone, thank you, Joel, he stole my thunder. I was going to say, if there's anyone that is unable to talk, can you just pop me a little note in the chat and I will upgrade your permission so you can join us properly. But without further ado, I think it's a perfect time to hand over to the expert herself, Inga Romanoff, who's going to take us through GDPR. Take it away, Inga.
Well, thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. And not only I'd love to come out for that drink that you offered, but now it reminds me I have to post a lot of resources for everybody, which I probably have not done as much in a couple of years. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sure GDPR is not something new. Like, you guys have heard about it for how long now? Several years. So what I wanted to do today is perhaps talk about what's different with Brexit exit, as you took control. You took back control of the country. So what does that mean to us marketers? I want to talk a bit about leadership position and who's responsible. Emily's poll question, and perhaps just brush over certain specifics of the GDPR itself. But if you could stop me, challenge me, ask me questions throughout, don't let me just blah, blah, blah. I have a few pretty slides, but that's probably not what this session is about. I'm sure you can join plenty of those on Zoom and stare into the nothingness, but please ask questions. So let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. The window or screen.
That's the hard part.
Oh my God, I think I can do it. And then I think, I believe that I will not see the chat. So Adele, Emily, if I'm missing a question, can you stop me and yell out? Okay, definitely. Share screen.
We're really good at that.
All right, not block. It doesn't allow for me to allow. Okay.
He absolutely hates Bevy. We keep trying it as user group leaders, but he's like, no.
Well, I also had to log in through Firefox, which I'm usually in Chrome.
Sorry about that. I have your presentation on this side, Inga. Would you like me to try?
Let me try entire screen. That might work. Hello?
Thanks for your patience to all of our existing and new London user group members.
I feel like everyone in the London user group knows every time. You're like, great, a good 10 minutes of this is going to be these two. These class trying to work it out.
Sorry, we've got time to grab a drink.
Well, it's the beauty of us coming back into our office that we may be able to host you soon.
Yes, I hope so.
Tease us.
In which case, at this point, we'd all be saying, more wine, Vicar.
You guys know how to do it. Okay. You have the PowerPoint. Why don't you share it? Because now I have this thing that's stuck on my screen. Okay, at least I got rid of that. If I figure it out while I'm talking, then I can grab it. But it doesn't matter, really. I think I can follow. I may have just to yell out which slide. I think what's happening is I have to update it on my Firefox permissions too. Whatever.
Emily, would you mind doing it, please? Because I'm also getting the same error.
Sure. I don't know if I have it. Do I have it?
Yes, it came through on email.
Okay. Why don't we give a little run through of an intro to GDPR while I'm looking for it, because that might take a few minutes.
All right, we can do it. Okay, so GDPR is a data protection law, and today as I'm talking, just remember, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not here to solve your GDPR problems for the company. Every company, depending on the industry size and many other parameters, such as are we multinational, are we headquartered in the UK, or Europe, or in the US, for example, every company makes their own decisions. And hopefully by now you have had these trainings, conversations, and know clearly who the GDPR owner is in your organization. If you don't, raise your hand. Let's talk about that. So today I want to focus on marketing more so, and about responsibilities of us as marketers. We're in Marketo. We're frontline responders. We're like the ER of marketing. Somebody may have had ad campaigns, maybe it's us, but we collect the data, we store it, and we also, I am actually on slide 3, and we make decisions or set up rules on who we target, when, how often, etc. Can I have a show of hands of who has GDPR configured in their instance already? Or just a shout out, we do, we don't?
Yes, but not to the level we want it to yet over here.
Okay. Would it be of interest if I speak to what's different in the GDPR today as opposed to when it went live?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. Okay. I guess let's go to slide 6. When we launched GDPR, and that was in 2018, they have been working on it for years. In fact, I think it is a true miracle that EU agreed on the law and everybody agreed on the same rules, even though it took a few years. I think they worked on it since 2012. And it was largely based on the General Data Protection Regulation at the UK for years. It was largely similar to it, with the regulation being the overall document and law, and certain directives that applied regionally, meaning the law outlined the rules, and then some countries had their own peculiarities that were not law but were established. And I think the benefit of that was for multinational companies like the ones Warren works with, where there's perhaps 28 different 3 pages of 28 different rules of how data should be managed. There was one law, it was clearly written, and it was relatively simple without all the my favorite European bureaucracy. It was easy and understandable. The law was around the privacy and data protection, empowering the consumer to control, to have visibility, and to request certain things from parties that touch their data. Marketing is just a portion of it. That's why I said we're not here to talk about GDPR overall. We're here to enforce portions that we have under our control. And so when Brexit happened, from a legislative perspective, it was important to outline, are we still GDPR? And in reality, now there's EU GDPR and then the UK GDPR, which is almost word to word. It's similar. There's just additions, and they have to do more with immigration and basically accessing information for greater protection of us as a country, so to speak. But as far as marketing goes, I want to say every single slide in my presentation, which I've put together back in 2018, still applies. If you would like to look the comparison of the documents, there's a in one of my slides, I want to say on slide 9, there's in the comments, you'll have the copy of this and anything else you'd like. There's a key link schedule link, and you can actually see the details of what changed. But actually, if you, yeah, that's the link. Actually, if you don't mind going to slide 7, the concepts are still the same. We're still talking about consent. This is something that I am joining you from New York, and here in the United States, we can spam. This is why we called our law "can spam," all in caps. This is true, and this is something that is just a very vague concept of consent. Even with our CCPA rules, which they thought maybe was GDPR, not even close. But consent, which is clearly and in human language spelled out what that means. We'll talk about it in a second, just to refresh. Personal data, the rights of data subjects, controller, processor, and the need for a legal basis for processing, like having prior consent or exceptions, what they are. I think we'll flip through the rights of the individuals on slide 8 pretty quickly. I'm going to stop here for 1 second and see if there's any questions. Check the chat.
Right now. And everyone should have the ability to unmute as well if you have any questions that you feel confident speaking out about.
Probably no news. You've heard of these, and some of them, most of them apply to us, not all of them. Many of them sort of apply to what the company does with data. But you, if you are in Marketo, if you're logging in, you probably have the most skill, if not the most visibility for these. So I want to say, don't shy away from knowing more about GDPR and speaking up about this in the organization, especially if you think that there are some issues that haven't been addressed by the legal or business initiatives. Let's go to slide 9 to address what's changed. So the Data Protection Act of 2018, which is the UK regulation, was amended, and there is a 4-year adequacy decision. I did not come up with these words. This is legalese. But basically that means that for the 4 years until 2025, there is an exchange of data between Europe and the UK, and it's just all as it was before. No changes that we need to make until 2025. This was also adopted on the EU side in June this year. The data can go back and forth, just like before Brexit, and then we don't need to make any changes for a while. There is a new terminology, third country. That's what EU is calling the UK in the legal documents. We can go to the next slide, and that talks about apply to me. Just like before, the regulation and laws will apply to you if you work for an organization that is physically located in the UK, if you offer goods or services for individuals in the UK, if you monitor the behavior of such people, or if you process their data. Basically, any company with a website. Now, if the company is headquartered in the US, they will go through their own risk assessment and kind of interpret. The law is interpreted by each company individually. So you will find that my recommendations are a bit more on the conservative side. So I will say, I would recommend you do this. That may mean that your company said we don't have to. I want to talk a bit about consent and the grounds for data processing. Although these are really boring words, what that really means is for us as marketers, that's on slide 11, this is an opportunity to be better about our targeting. This is an opportunity to improve conversion rates. Warren mentioned those. This is an opportunity to not to send random campaigns out to people who are not interested in them. But it also means a little bit more work. Hopefully, luckily, you have something set up that's automated. If not, you should set it up so you don't have to worry and have all the benefits of that without having to do manual work. A few years ago, when Canada had a similar, it's not as overarching and deep. Canada had Castle law that went into effect. And I remember doing the training, and the first reaction from marketers was, oh, it's so difficult. We have to do so much work. We had to clean the data and all of this, and it was painful. But then when I asked them, but as persons, what was your take on Castle, which is like GDPR, but only applies to how we market. It has a much smaller scope. And they said, well, actually, we noticed we get a lot less spam. And that was nice. I think GDPR is a similar opportunity for us to be a little bit more thoughtful about segmentation, audience, and sending things to people that want those things, or at least do a better job guessing what things that might be interested in. It talks about consent of the data subject and basically collecting that consent, the opt-in. In our language, that means having a landing page with an opt-in tick and also being specific about what it is that we are asking for them to opt in to. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned that the regulation in general is bigger. It has data privacy, website tracking, marketing activities, third parties. As a marketer, you're probably touching all of them, maybe a little bit less of the first one of the data privacy. That's probably managed by your legal. Second question on Emily's poll, who is in charge of that. But everything else is really not only in your control, but also is your responsibility. Actually, let's go to the next slide. It impacts all forms of electronic communications. Website, the cookie, the data collection on website, emails you're sending out. If you have implementation that involves text messaging or direct messages on social media, those are regulated as well as data storage or data science techniques. If you're scoring people based on their site page visitations, if you're scoring people in a third-party application that works together with Marketo, if you're sharing your prospect data with a third-party partner, that applies to you as well. I just wanted to call out, there is a change. So with Brexit now, there's specificity of what the fines are for the UK versus Europe. I want to say they're the same. From my experience so far, working with a variety of companies in different industries and in different countries as well, this has been highly enforced at the beginning of when GDPR just launched. If you remember in 2018, big websites went down. We're talking media, communications websites, newspapers. These were giants, and they just didn't think about GDPR, and then they had to shut down the website to make sure they don't get fined. I want to say that in general, it's a little bit more relaxed. That doesn't mean you will not be fined, but if you're thinking, should I set it up? Should I not set it up? I would recommend that's not your decision. That should be decided by your company, and the risk assessment should be done by either outside consultants for your company or by the data protection officer. If you're working for a company over 250 employees, there's a person who has that that title. In a smaller company, one of my clients, she was the head of marketing and she was the data protection officer. So, but it was it was under 250 employees. But I want to say, assessment of the risk is not your responsibility. Assessment of exposure is, meaning if you think that you don't have it set up, you should probably bring it up in the organization. Or if you think that you have exposure in one of the channels, it's something that could be easily remedied. I talked about consent. At this point, are you familiar with it? What is consent? What does that mean? If Emily, if I meet you at a conference and I give you my business card, can you email me? Is that consent?
Well, if you gave me your business card to say, here's my business card, let's get in touch, let's go for dinner, then I think that's okay.
Or if you asked me for it and I gave it to you, can you email me? Then can you put me in a database in email?
Probably not. I think you have to give it to me, and I have to have a record of you giving it to me and why you gave it to me.
Yes, you have to have a record. On the next slide, I'm actually talking about what consent means, and it has to be slide 15. Even with offline events, you may collect some data, and that may look like a list of people. It may look like a business card, and it's much easier to collect consent when somebody opts in for a white paper on your website. You can stamp that record with the date, time, with the type of website, what they downloaded, and store. If it is a business card, it's a little bit hard. Technically, yes, I gave you consent, but depending on the company you work for, if you work for Facebook, I would say email me and get a double opt-in confirmation, basically. If you work for a smaller company, that is considered a consent. So something that is freely given, specific to the type of the communication I'm opting in. And that does not mean what we use in the US will say, I'm opting into all the marketing communications going forward, whatever you decide to send me whenever. It has to list all the types of communications that you're currently running: newsletter, special offers, product updates, and event invitations. It has to be well-informed and unambiguous. And I think it also is important whenever if it is a digital, so verbal is different. You'll have to collect those business cards, enter them in, have your intern type them in, send the email confirmation, or double opt-in, whatever is the risk levels that you are willing to take. But in a digital environment, you must record what that language was, what they opted into, and store it. You can go to the next slide, just if you guys want to take a screenshot of this. If you don't already know, I'm sure you do, because we've been talking about it for a long time. Actually, the one that consent means, so you need to record who consented, when they consented, that's slide 15. What they were told at the time, how they consented, the method of opt-in, and also if consent has been withdrawn. People may give consent multiple times and they can withdraw it. When they consented is also specifically regulated. It must be day and time. This is important for us in terms of systems control. It is very possible that in this particular moment, Marketo server was, okay, Russell's going to kick me. Not Marketo server, maybe the form didn't work right that moment, and so we didn't collect the withdrawal. Or if we collect date time, we can always pinpoint for specific outages if there's ever an inquiry into our opt-in database. People may consent multiple times. You must record it every time, and you must keep a copy of what they opted into. In some more complex environment, setups, for example, in banking with Amex, we had these landing pages that we would launch, then we have to archive them, and the language might have been a bit different. So this is where I would say, in the past, we would have had, if you guys are not talking, do you mind muting yourself? I think there's some background noise. Before, if we had a landing page and we decided to create a new one and change the language, no big deal. If you had the landing page with opt-in language on it, please make sure you're archiving them and you keep track of them. If you're working in banking or other regulated industry, you're probably already doing that. But for GDPR, if there's an inquiry, you will need to have a complete track record of these. And like I said, you are first responders. You are the paramedics of marketing inquiries. And if there's a marketing violation that is being investigated, you will be the person digging into that. So make sure it's easy for you to find things, that they're recorded. And then if you are changing landing pages or changing opt-in language, let's say we only had webinars for a year or so, a year and a half. And now as of July 19, we can do in-person events. And this is added to your opt-in language. That must be recorded. And perhaps you need to change the segmentations for those who did not consent to those. Any questions on this? I know I talked a lot.
A few questions floating around in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe from Adele.
So I asked if anyone was doing anything fun to capture consent if it's not being digitally obtained. So, you mentioned your example before with the business cards. I wanted to see if anyone was like taking pictures of them, storing them in a filing cabinet. I was just hoping to see if anyone had anything interesting to share. Warren has shared a fantastic link for a gamification of boring forms. I was just watching. It looks really cool. So thank you for that, Warren. But there's no other questions at this moment in time.
Okay. As we're talking about this, and it's sort of relevant to the website and forms, in 2019, Marketo changed the way form prefill works. And I don't know if you made any updates or not, but this applies particularly to people who scroll around the website and come to your preference center if you have it. Oftentimes, the opt-in checkbox lives in links that people come to through the emails. No issue there because form prefill will behave as per usual for those who have clicked through an email. If somebody went on a website and then scrolled down through your privacy policy, went to your preference center, there will be no form prefill. This is something that Marketo changed as part of the overall tighter security. They called it an upgrade, but in reality, it was a downgrade to customer experience. This is key because if you're not using Marketo forms, which is also case for larger organizations quite often, if you don't have form prefill, but you do have an opt-in checkbox, for those who navigated to it and did not check it because they thought I already told you that I opted in, it may erase their previous consent. If you had, oftentimes people like to use a true or false, a Boolean field for the opt-in checkbox. You cannot use a Boolean checkbox for GDPR consent. I'm going to talk about it a little bit at the end again. Because basically, if somebody did not have a form prefill, but they had previously opted in, they gave you explicit consent, you've recorded it, then they navigated to the form and just did not check it this time, it will erase their consent. It will come in as false, and you will have had to process the decline, or basically they withdrew their consent technically, but not in reality. Make sense? This is actually a pretty big issue if you're using non-Marketo forms. It is a bit less of an issue for just website navigation, but it is a big deal for GDPR.
Ooh, Simone, we discovered this issue and created a workaround. She's put in the chat using a temporary form. Oh, I feel like she's going to.
Field. She meant field.
Field. Sorry, Simone. Temp.
Yeah. Temp. First of all, the consent checkbox must be a string, and you may use some of the JavaScript. So one of the rules for GDPR for soliciting such consent is that you cannot have that box appear pre-checked, even if the person previously opted in. So it should be hidden. All right. No wine. I guess it is time, so sorry. No judgment passed. And that also applies to Castle, by the way, to the Canada marketing rules. The opt-in checkbox cannot appear pre-checked for people who you're soliciting opt-in from, or even if it was pre-checked before. So this is where JavaScript comes in. So custom behavior on web forms, if they opted in and it is already technically pre-checked, it should be hidden. It should appear blank for everybody else. Pre-checked checkbox on the form is a violation of GDPR rules. Emily, you too? Goodness. All right, I'm going to take you to this pretty chart. I have an eye chart as well. I printed it out just to show you. Marketo flows. Am I getting anybody
Ooh,
excited?
It looks
Yeah.
like Lisa chart. Is that right?
This is the flows what you would do in Marketo. If anybody wants, so we set these up for clients, but if you want to try to do it yourself, if you don't have it set up yet, or if you just want to do a sanity check, just email me and I'll share what fields we configure, what flows look like. But this is the human version of the new person opt-in, consent given, consent unanswered or withdrawn. By the way, question to the group. I will volunteer someone if no volunteers show up. Can you email a person if there's no consent on file?
I'm watching the chat.
Yeah, so far, everybody's just excited at Emily's wine.
Yeah, we've got 2. Yes, yes. Depends which country. For service purposes. Yes, based on legitimate interest, question mark. Ooh, these came in fast all at once. What do you think, Inga?
Excellent. So depends which country. Legitimate interest. For personal email, yes, that's not correct. Or yes, for operational stuff. There's a few. Actually, do you want to flip to the next slide? One of the myths is, no, you cannot email this person. Actually, if you force me, if I have to say yes or no, I'll say no. But actually, yes, you can contact a prospect via email, text, or social media DM under these circumstances. If you have, well, in this case, you don't, but legitimate interest, which is a loophole of the regulation, with sales outreach or via other channels. If somebody even withdrew their consent, you can try to solicit, you can do a retargeting campaign and try to obtain it in another channel. So yes, for operational stuff, you can do one-on-one basis. So not through Marketo. If it's a sales or personal outreach, yes, you can. This is important, and legitimate interest is very vaguely described. This is the only weak part of the regulation that has been fully taken advantage of by the B2B organizations. But like I said, the individual risk assessment for each of the companies is different and should not be done by anybody on this call. Not even somebody who is certified. It's a decision made by the business and their privacy lawyers. But so for us, what are the rules for us? The exceptions are very specific. If you don't have explicit consent on file, you can still email people with things that they directly requested, that falls under legitimate interest. If somebody went on your website and requested a white paper, but you do not have a consent on file, you can still send them that white paper, but you cannot market them the rest of the stuff. Technical term. You can do a sales outreach, and that was one of the motivations for Marketo implementations with the CRM or Salesforce in particular. It's very easy to create a GDPR consent management package and also show that information and even have some inputs directly from Salesforce. When the rep calls up upon that prospect, they can try to attempt to collect such consent.
Yeah, Inga, there's a piece there as the salesperson on here who uses legitimate interest in sales outreach a lot. What we do and what we advise people to do is always have a link on any correspondence they send out where they don't have consent to either opt out instantly or a link to your GDPR compliance page or your preference center. depending how you
Yep.
want to handle it. Because it's just good practice, and it shows that you actually honestly believe that there's a legitimate interest in what you're doing, or that we have something we think you're going to be interested in. But if you don't, here's the way to get out of it straight away. And we surprisingly don't have that many people telling us to go away.
Yeah, you're not required to have that link, but I think
No,
it
it's
is.
just good practice.
It's practical, and what I like about GDPR, it is a very common sense type of it. This is not a bureaucracy annoying. This is something that allows for us to be more relevant to our audience. And while you're not required to have that link in your personal communications, I think it's a nice to have. You can also still send operational emails that I know I'm talking a little long here, just doing a quick time check, and we still have about 10 minutes. So I'll talk a little faster. Hopefully you can still understand me. If you're sending operational statements, your account was hacked, anything that has to do with servicing and customer experience, you can still email it to them. You can email to your clients that did not give you explicit consent, but with products. So you're prospecting to the existing clients with different products or services, but they may be directly relevant to what they have purchased in the past, or may potentially improve their experience. For example, if there's a software upgrade that they have to pay for, you're prospecting to them, but you can send it to them under legitimate interest. Any questions with legitimate interest? I want to flip quickly to the slide 18. I think that just very specifically says that you can also reach out to people who did not provide a consent via phone, so long as they are not on a do not call registry. I forget what it's called in the UK. EU has it. I think every country actually has their own, but as long as they did not explicitly opt in from the phone call, you can still call them even if they decline the consent and try to obtain such an opt-in. Quickly here, if you, on slide 19, if you have not yet done this, a lot of times in the US more so, maybe less in the marketing that you do, or if you're working with large companies, there's a question, but how do we know they are in these countries that GDPR applies to, be it the UK or EU? And I think that the best way, instead of trying to guess, especially post-pandemic, when people are working from Spain, just because they could, instead of trying to figure out by IP, by any other particular pages or languages that they have engaged with, I think the best way, in my opinion, this is not regulated by the law, but my suggestion from a practical point of view is to ask the country on your forms. And that, especially for countries that are headquartered in the US and they sort of don't care about GDPR, but a portion of their visitors and customers and prospects might be in regulated regions. I think that that allows for you to manage just only that portion of the audience. Managing explicit opt-in on all forms and any other data collection methods, whether you're using Marketo forms or other forms, or you're using vendors. That's yet another one. If you're working with vendors, you need to make sure they're GDPR compliant. And provide multiple and easy ways to opt in or unsubscribe. Opt in, opt out, they should be able to do it easily in different channels. They should be able to come to your website and find that. In some cases, like we ran into, that is fully managed by complex JavaScript logic and queries the database. So let's say if somebody was created by a Marketo form and they go to the preference center, they could not select any of the options. It just took them on a fallback page. Make sure that anybody, even if they're not using JavaScript, if it's disabled, I feel that GDPR made preference center ever so much more important than ever before. I'm a big proponent of that, but make it easy so that it definitely works. And then you're only using JavaScript for some fancy portions of that, like if you want to add some behaviors, but for the most part, anybody can access that. Remember about the form prefill. that applies to those who are using non-Marketo forms on a website. That can highly impact. You may be losing some of your most engaged people who go on the website and register for events if it's overriding their opt-in into the opt-out. Just check that. And of course,
Inga, oh, sorry. I know we've only got like 8 minutes left, so I just wanted to really make sure that, like this slide, like if you don't already, do you have like the top things that we need to make sure we're doing, or like the top no, or I don't know, something that can that our audience can really bring home, and then we can have some time for some Q&A as well. Didn't mean to cut you. I was trying to find a.
you didn't. I actually finished that slide. Go to slide 20. These are your to-dos. I want to say, so preference center, naming convention. Naming convention will allow for you to manage the consent management. So if they opted into this particular type of communication, you can see that clearly. Clean up the database. If you have duplicates, not only duplicates are evil, just Marketo world-wise, just ever, they are worse. Although unsubscribes are managed in Marketo, even if they're duplicate records, when it comes to managing consent, it becomes a must to clean up your database. While we are soliciting any questions, go to slide 16. We can just hang on the process there. I'll chat while people are collecting their thoughts. And let's see if there's any questions.
Okay, so we have a question in from Warren Stokes, of course. What's your perception of tools that help manage your opt-in cross-channel, like Data Grail, for example? Do you have experience with those?
I haven't used Data Grail. I've heard of it. I'll just say these are the things that matter to me, that the person is connected to Marketo, and we have the data that allows for us to see consent. Typically, that means to me the date, so date time, let's see, unread messages, date time of the consent, what they consented into, the name. I actually like to stamp program ID. I'm obviously Marketo Geek ++, even though it's not important, but it's something that is very clear and specific. I like to collect, I archive these. So as long as that tool gives you all the individual data, I don't care if it's managed by Marketo, outside tool, outside agency. I don't think that matters. However, make sure that the data that is coming in is managed in Marketo in your segmentations, the targeting, the in or out. If you're managing, so for example, we didn't talk about Germany. Germany and Spain before GDPR had a double opt-in. In Germany, it was enforced. In Spain, it was not. In Germany, it is not required by the law, but it is the best practice in the market. And I would say if you are setting up GDPR, if it's managed via Marketo, we just automatically put in the double opt-in management, and we consider the full consent, not just the initial yes, but also the confirmation from them, which gives you a bit of a drop-off on the audience, but it's much more engaged and much cleaner in your targeting.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a question in from Vivian. What do you think of sales outreach tools that automate one-to-one outreach? Is this in breach of GDPR?
It's not in breach of GDPR. As a salesperson, you can reach out to people with or without consent, with the exception of the phone. Just make sure they're not on a do not call listing. It's not a breach of GDPR.
Perfect, thank you. James says, challenge there is automated tech. I'm not quite following that part.
They have opt-out.
It's probably quicker. Oh. Yeah, so it's probably easier to speak than type. So yeah, when you're using automated one-to-one outreach, the technology becomes a challenge, right? Because it's not a human interaction; it's a person, a bot basically mimicking a person, and so often those automated technologies for sales outreach will have an opt-out after 3 emails in order to display that it isn't a real person; it's actually a bot. The challenge I always find here as well is it a channel or how do we classify it, right? When it's a sales automation technology, always gets tricky. And where do you put that? Do you put it on your preference center? Wide open question.
Yeah, it's a vital. I could talk for another 20 minutes on this. If you figure out a way to identify a bot versus a real person, please let me know so we can make millions and billions. The bots, there are some very simplistic bots, like the 2017 bot that targeted Marketo forms with Philippines IP, and there's really sophisticated ones that are so well thought through that they look like a real person. I think in the beginning of your question, you mentioned sales tech or sales outreach. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. I think I'm more worried about marketing side of things, that when we select a target audience, our initial marketable universe is not simply people who are not unsubscribed and not invalid, but though our initial starting point should be people who we have active, valid consent on, and for some countries like Germany, also a double opt-in on top of that. We do not want to obtain those opt-ins simply by some click link in this email and we collected your opt-in. Those must be landing pages. I know a lot of times there's a one-click unsubscribe, which technically speaking, I'm a bit against. I feel that they have to land on a page and click the landing page link that confirms the real human action. So hopefully that is in summary in 30-second answer for a 20-minute question.
Okay,
It's super powerful if used correctly, and if only our legal team would let us.
James, I think you're right. It's super powerful. We do treat it as a new channel, and it's something which is growing if used correctly. Interestingly, on the other side of the equation, if you look at the other products, Adobe has things like Campaign, which have call center capability. That's where it starts to get very sticky, because you've got automated telephone systems, which are absolutely illegal in some countries, and they're more challenging when it comes to GDPR and regulatory compliance. So it's less of a challenge for us here in the sort of the B2B space, but certainly in some of the B2C spaces, it's challenging.
I think the key there is used correctly, right? So if you don't have a connection with that person, you're trying to automate and put in some technology that's trying to get around GDPR, you're going to get a shit response, whatever channel you use, if you don't have a connection with them. Yeah. So it's always the case, is that used correctly, I think, is the key there. Because it doesn't matter like getting around it, you just need to have that connection in order for them to even respond, because there's no point of using a channel if they don't respond anyway, whether you get around GDPR or not.
James enabling SDRs to love him to death.
I know we're right at the time. Unfortunately, I have to let you go. I want to leave you with a thought. I think GDPR comes with the compliance word and we don't like it, but it is truly an opportunity for us to be better marketers. A couple of years ago, I've actually interviewed a Marketo own Peter Bell. He's the head of marketing. And it was just so exciting. And he was talking about Marketo did this 2 tribes of marketing research, marketers that looked at it as compliance and annoyance, and marketers who said, look, I can actually pinpoint the people who are more interested in getting what I have to, what I have to send them. So I apologize for the French version. That's the only one I could find when I Googled it. But download that, read it. It has a lot of interesting data. I hope you will be left with an inspiration. I'm happy to send you as sort of to-dos in the PowerPoint itself that Emily was sharing. Thank you for doing my job for me. After the closing slide, there's literally a checklist of things. If you haven't done that, go through those, send me questions. Send me questions. You guys.
And come to the GDPR channel in our London Marketo user group Slack. I've put the link in. Come and continue the conversation.
Inga, I'll try and find that English version of that 2 tribes thing. It was good. I think.
Yeah, it was excellent. And it was like more than 1,000 respondents that provided, leaders in marketing that provided their point of view. I think it was fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much for your questions, for joining. Hope to see you again, and I would be happy to address any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Inga, and thank you everyone for joining. So we'll post a recording up on our Bevy page as always. And Emily's kindly shared the Slack channel. So any further questions and discussions, please migrate over to there. And as always, it's been a pleasure to host you all. And we will post details of the next mug in the coming weeks. So if anyone has any topic suggestions, maybe you, James, you might want to step up to the plate. Just give us a shout on Slack and we'll get it organised. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks for having me. And I guess this is the wine time.
Yes, 6 o'clock.
Good to see you again. I hope you're well.
Lovely to see you. Lovely to see a couple of